And they don't really testify in committees that much. They meet face to face.
Yeah.
And I go in there, I see evidence of that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that's who's in control.
Yeah. Well, I think it screams.
We can flip that.
I think it screams of a statewide negligence. To me, especially on the Republican Party side of things.
Don't get me started on that one.
It's massive.
Yeah.
And so I think for anybody who's listening to this, who has a representative, someone on a statewide level who is a part of the Republican Party, I think that ought to be shoved up in their face day one, tomorrow. You are listening to Not on the Payroll right here at notonthepayroll.com. You can check us out at Facebook, check us out at YouTube, check us out at Rumble. You can also check us out at Twitter as well. If you see the gorilla with the red headphones, that's our mascot, and that pretty much tells you that we put the information out there to you. Today we got a very, very interesting podcast for you, just simply for the fact that it's not every day that you meet a founder of a Eliminate Property Tax group. And so we have with us Russell Bennett, who is, founder. If you have been online, if you've been on Facebook, you've seen the different groups. I think there are a number of different groups throughout different regions. I'm not sure exactly how big this goes yet. But we're going to dig in and try to find out some today as to Russell Bennett's group and what his objective is with these groups. But Russell, I really appreciate you taking time with me.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, I know you made the long journey.
That's right.
And
but it's worth it.
So we could do this face to face.
That's right.
And so property tax, eliminating property tax is kind of it is the flagship of what you spend your time doing. So
that's it.
Give us a little bit of history as to how you got dialed in on property tax. Everybody deals with property tax. Everybody's freaking out right now because of the appraisals. But how did you get specifically dialed in on this thing?
This was over 10 years ago when Deborah Medina was running for governor. She was advocating a bill to eliminate property tax. And I was in Houston, she's in Wharton, and I decided, you know what, she's holding a monthly meeting once a month at her house. And I thought, that's not that far away, and I've got a chance to perhaps be in connection with the next governor of Texas.
Sure.
So I made it a point for the 2 or 3 years that she was campaigning between the governor and the comptroller's race to go every month to her house, and there was always something interesting going on. One night she had a gentleman there. His name's Rick Cunningham. He's an economist, attorney, and he was talking about a solution to eliminate property tax, which became the bill that was filed in 2013. It was HB 3742. It was filed by George Lavender, who authored it, and it was a solution, a comprehensive legislative solution to eliminate property tax, sales tax, franchise tax, and 68 plus other taxes, and replace them all with a consumption tax. And the way that consumption tax was going to be set at 7% for the state. And the way that was going to happen was we were proposing an expanded base. Right now, sales tax only covers about 28% of the GDP in Texas, and we were talking about expanding it to 65 or 70%. And that would allow it to keep it low so that, we wouldn't, so to speak, price ourselves out of the market. And then what he had done was he started out by looking to see if anybody had come up with a solution at that point. And Texas Public Policy Foundation, which has done a lot of work on that. He even had Art Laughter, who's a famous economist, worked with Ronald Reagan.
Sure.
He had done, his group had done a pretty detailed research into the possibility of replacing property tax with sales tax. And the thing about Laffer's solution is that they talked about it in a macroeconomic level of replacing the property tax on the state level, but they didn't really talk about the local level. Nobody really does, and it turns out that's where the most difficulty is
Sure.
is eliminating on a local basis. Because at the time that Rick was looking into this, and he wound up doing his own research down to the taxing jurisdiction level. There's 4,000, at the time there were 4,000 taxing jurisdictions in Texas. Today there's over 5,000. But he did a study down to the taxing jurisdiction level of his solution and determined that we could probably replace 95% of all property tax with a solution. Now there's conditions out there because we're talking about using consumption tax, where, for instance, I use an example of a community in Houston called Piney Point Village. It's a bedroom community. It's full of multi-million-dollar homes, but they have zero sales of goods and services. You could have $1 zillion, or you have $1 zillion% of a sales tax, you'd never be able to replace that property tax. But the developers in Texas, MUDs and whatever, know that they can extort the money that they need to provide the services or whatever infrastructure is required for their development and get it passed. And so that's what's created so many of these special jurisdictions where there's not enough of a base to replace property tax with a sales tax or consumption tax. So those situations, which are not the majority of them, but those situations may be as simple as combining those jurisdictions because those people are spending money somewhere. But that's something for the comptroller to investigate and the local jurisdictions to come up with their solutions as to how that would work. But that was what I heard that night, and that just shocked me because, and that's most people like, well, how are you going to pay for the roads and the police and the fire? And this is all just because we've been so conditioned to believe that we have to have a property tax, and we can't do without it. But there are 17 countries in the world that fund their entire governments without a property tax. Texas can too. It's not impossible. And so I heard all this, and it was pretty stunning presentation. He did a really good job of going through the bill and what he had, the solution that he'd come up with. And so I supported, Deborah through that period of time. But after 2013, she didn't come back as a candidate. George Lavender lost his election. Harvey Hildebrand, who was the Ways and Means Committee chair at the time, who was in favor of it and supportive of it, he ran for another election. He lost. So nobody came back to carry it forward. And so that was about 2013. And about summer of 2016, I was on Facebook looking at what Jonathan Stickland was doing, and he was floating these trial balloons. He says, who wants to eliminate property tax? He was kind of trying to get the feel for his constituents as to what they wanted to do the next session. And I kind of raised my hand like, I've got a solution for you. And I never got any kind of response from Jonathan on my attempt, but I told Deborah about it, and Deborah picked up the phone, called him, and we got a meeting. And so we went in. It was February of 2017. Session had already started. And Rick was there, I was there, Deborah was there, and we were talking to Jonathan. Jonathan basically listened to the presentation, says, well, I love what you want to do, but my plate's just too full. I can't take on something this size. So we said, well, okay, thanks for listening. And I watched us go through the session and started looking for somebody else that could author the bill. And anyway, long story short, I wound up here in Jasper County. Mike Hillen, who is constituent of James White,
sure,
said James wants to eliminate property tax, and so anyway, through Mike, I wound up meeting with James, and Rick got to my intention was never to do what I'm doing right now. It was to introduce people to Rick, let him talk, them see the light, and take up the bill and and expect it to move forward, right?
Right.
Didn't work out that way. But anyway, we had a great meeting with James, but it's easy to talk about eliminating property tax until you have to do it.
Sure.
And he was obviously in that meeting. He was obviously intimidated by the thought of authoring that bill. But over time, I kept getting calls from James, and I just out of the blue, 7 or 8 o'clock at night, I get a call from him, and he talked for an hour, and I'd answered some questions. Over time, he finally said, just before last session, he said, I want to have another conversation with Rick. And so we got together, spent a couple hours talking with James. He asked him his questions and whatnot. And James says, okay, I'm ready to do it. So he took the bill, which was, again, it was 3742 from 2013, and he filed it. And we filed early, right after the general election in November. And that was our intent, to get it filed as early as possible,
Sure.
so that we can then get support for it, co-authors and whatnot. And nothing happened for a while, and then middle of December, James gets called from Leg Council. That's the attorneys that write the bills for the legislators. And Leg Council says, we're going to rewrite the bill. And I thought, that's going to kill it. This bill was 224 pages long.
Right.
And I thought, they're going to rewrite a 224-page bill. They got 7,000 bills to write that session. I thought, we'll be the last one they will work on because they'll want to get all the small ones out of the way. I thought, we won't make it. It won't happen. But, James gave us the clearance, the authority to engage with Leg Council and give them the requirements, which is what Rick did. He spent the week between Christmas and New Year's of his time working with Leg Council to identify the requirements and to give them the input that they needed to rewrite the bill. My input to them was I can help you make this happen quicker, and I had a suggestion that from my background in project management, which was a methodology called well, I won't go into it, but anyway, it would increase or it would decrease the time it would take for them to do it by basically when they would finish a section, if they would give it to us and let us review it and give it their feedback, and they said, no, we're gonna do the whole thing and then we'll give it to you. I thought, this is not going to work. So 2 days before the deadline for filing the bill, they came out and they gave it to us, which was kind of that was a surprise. I didn't expect it at all.
Right.
We looked at it and I said, okay, it's got problems. It's incomplete. It needs some edits. It was what I expected. It was a draft.
Yeah.
And so we looked at it and I said, what are we going to do? And one of my colleagues says, we got to run with it. And I thought, yeah, I think he's right. So we told James we wanted to go ahead and file it. And so he went in and filed it. That was the last session, and in 2021. And we wound up having 3 special sessions after that. A couple of them were for property tax. And James filed it every time, in every session. And every time we filed it, we re-edited it, we improved it, and we tried to repair it. It's still not there, but that bill only had 12 pages. We went from 224 to 12. So you can see there's probably something not quite,
Something's missing.
as comprehensive. Yeah.
Sure.
And so, but it was a good enough framework.
Yeah.
And so we wound up with about overall 17 authors and co-authors that joined the bill. And James wound up running for another office and lost, and so he was out. So we didn't have him to refile it
Mm-hmm.
for this session. So last last summer, probably in June, probably a year ago, started looking to meet with the co-authors and the authors of the bill and see if we could get them. You can be a joint author and not
Sure.
to see if we could get them engaged and get them to file it.
Right.
And that was a very interesting time. That primary last year, a lot of grassroots people came out to run against incumbents, and my count was 67 of those grassroots candidates were campaigning on property tax, and about a dozen of them were campaigning to eliminate property tax. I've never seen that before.
Wow.
Unfortunately, the incumbents won by like 90%, but we got some new. We did get some new legislators in that, and I talked to quite a few of them, and I'll tell you what, it's easy to sign on to a bill. It's hard to be the author, because you are going to be the one.
You're going to be the spokesperson for it.
You're going to be the spokesperson, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's intimidating. And this is not an easy bill. And this is one of the things why I didn't want this role. I wanted Rick to speak. Rick was a subject matter expert.
Well, where is Rick at this point?
Rick's out of the game right now. He's got back problems, and
Okay.
he's had 3 surgeries.
Wow.
So it takes him a while to heal, and so he's not engaged. But I realized that, I thought, well, you know what? I might lose Rick,
Yeah.
and I've got to do what I got to do, And so
You got to keep pushing forward.
The thing about it is that over time, with enough questions, when I had that meeting when I came out of that meeting with Stickland, the first thing I did was I started a Facebook group.
Yeah.
And, it took a long time to grow. Today we're almost 25,000.
Yeah.
But,
What kind of response, not to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
What kind of response did you see from other legislators who were not co-authors and not directly tied to this bill? What kind of, did you get any feedback?
there's not a lot of enthusiasm.
It's interesting you say that, because I talked to another representative that said the very same thing. And the question I would have is, why? Why do you believe that there is not? Because, here's the thing, man. This is almost like, in a way, this is like looking at how our grandparents used to handle their money, and how this credit card generation and debt and loan generation handles their money now. Yeah, one just seems like it makes sense if you just pace yourself, work and spend inside your means, look at savings, these types of things, as opposed to having $40,000, $50,000, $70,000 in credit card debt, at 29% interest, or 29%, this type of thing. So it almost seems like this is a no-brainer in a way, but we're so addicted to this other way. Like you said, we're so addicted to the fact of, well, this doesn't make any sense. Okay, all we're saying is X, Y, Z. Go this direction, for the revenue, and so to me, it makes me question why there is no.
I think there's a lot of reasons.
Okay. So what would you say is the top 2 or 3?
Well, one, it's not easy. It's going to be hard. And this is one of the things that Rick did a really good job of. Is he not only just came up with a legislative solution, but he came up with an implementation plan, and
Right.
that involves a lot of work. Okay, I'll set that aside. People want to see this happen like that. I don't blame them. This is a painful situation. People are losing their homes and their properties. People are moving to state because they can't afford it, all that kind of stuff. But it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
There's some things that can be done quickly. Other things will take time. The low-hanging fruit that everybody's going after is the M&O, which is the maintenance operation portion of the school tax, which is probably about 50 or 60% of everybody's tax. That's the easy part. The hard part is the one that Rick worked on the most, and that was the local solution. Because without it, you never eliminate property tax, and if you don't eliminate property tax, then you never own your property. That has got to be the end goal. And why do people not want to do this? I think there's a lot of reasons. One, like I said, it's not an easy solution. Like I said, when I talked to these legislators about eliminating property tax, they were intimidated. And I could see, I'm like, okay, I can tell from the questions, you don't have a clue.
Yeah.
And I understand, because I felt the same way.
Right.
I was like, I can't do this.
Right.
Rick's the subject matter expert. I'm never going to be that competent, and I'm not. But I found out that most of the questions, 80% of the time, are asked over and over and over again. And as I learned what the answers were from listening to Rick and doing my own research, I figured it out.
Yeah.
And so I'm to the point where I feel like, well, I'm competent enough to talk to legislators and advocate for it. But for them to step up and do that and have to stand in front of the legislation and advocate for it, it's not an easy ask. And it took, like I said, it took James White 4 years to get there.
Right.
We were lucky that this last election, Terry Leo Wilson, she was a new one. She was replacing Mays Middleton, who went to become a senator.
Right.
And she won her election. She basically took everything that we were proposing as her talking points in her campaign rhetoric, and she's just beautifully replicated. I mean, she was advocating eliminating property tax. She became one of the authors this session of our bill. The other one was Steve Toth. I talked to him. He was one of the first ones I talked to back in the summer. And he was not eager to take this bill on, but he finally said, I'll follow your bill. I thought, well, okay, maybe. I really don't want. I was talking to Tony Tinderholt, and Tony said, you don't want me following that bill. I said, yeah, I understand what you're saying. He says, but he says, you're right. You want somebody who wants to do it, not who's willing to do it. And that's the point. We want somebody that's a believer, that's an evangelist.
It almost makes sense that this would have that. It almost makes sense that a grass fire needs to occur. I mean, that's kind of what
we're getting there.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, because it's the idea, first of all, of eliminating property tax, even for people who will benefit from that whole idea. Seems like a daunting task for the layman. It's like, man, how the hell would that work? Well, it just doesn't make any sense. Well, this money comes from here, and that money comes from kind of what we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. But in the long run, it's almost like doing having to jump on a diet for 6 months to a year, work through the pains, work through all the months of not eating the burritos and the the convenience store foods and
your favorite snacks,
ding dongs and ho hos and all that. Not having to kind of restrain ourselves for a period of time during that pressure to come out on the other end and have a very viable system, a very viable process.
Our solution is revenue neutral. If it wasn't, nobody would talk to us.
Right.
So that's the first hurdle.
Yeah.
And once they understand that conversation is over.
So really, you almost have to have a legislator that has a certain tendency to want to be what do they call the whipping post. He's got to be geared that way.
Yeah.
To get through it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, almost like a martyr.
Well, you're going to be standing up in front of a train.
Yeah. There
are people in the legislature that want nothing to do with limiting property tax because they're vetted into it. They're somehow, and this is again, this is my tinfoil hat talking. They have money coming to them.
Yeah.
Through the system.
Right.
And so those lobbyists that benefit from it, that contribute to their campaigns, keep them in power.
Yeah.
So there's that. Then there's people like our number one favorite poster child for this is Paul Bettencourt.
Okay.
Because Paul is always ready to fight like hell to manage your property tax, but he never wants to win that war because he's in the business of property tax protests. He's got a multi-million-dollar business. He's got 40 or 50 employees that run it. Some of them are his family members. He's not going to ever want to eliminate property tax.
Sure.
And then he's connected to Dan Patrick.
Okay.
And ultimately to Greg Abbott. And the executives, Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick, Dave Phelan, what they present to us is that they are in contention or conflict between solutions over legislature. But what we don't know is that every week, those three guys all meet together. Every week during the session. They are collaborating. They are not in conflict. We are getting exactly what they designed for us to get. All the rest is theater and grandstanding.
Okay.
And I could go into a story about that, well, how do you know that? But I'll just say that here's one of the legislators that had a good bill a couple of years ago. We met with him in October 2020, Deborah and I did. And he had a solution to reduce the M&O. It was Texas Public Policy Foundation's solution to use the excess revenues that we are collecting, like we had, $33 billion, to buy down the M&O. And the projection that TPPF had was it would take 8 years to do it, maybe 10, and we would zero it out. I wouldn't eliminate all the property tax, but we'd eliminate 50 or 60%.
Fair share, yeah.
Yeah, big share of it, and it was easy. You just take the surplus and you pay off the M&O until the GDP grows to the point where it zeroes it out. So this legislator had that bill, and in fact that bill was filed 6 or 7 times this session. None of them got a hearing in the Appropriations Committee. His comment to us was, my bill didn't get a hearing because the governor didn't want it, the lieutenant governor didn't want it, and this House Speaker didn't want it. They all had their own bill. And guess what? That was the bill that made it through that session in the legislature. Not his, but the governor's.
Yeah.
And TPPF, when I met with their staff, one of their staff members, and TPPF has been an advocate of eliminating property tax for the last dozen years. And the comment back, in the conversation, he said, there's no political will. I said, there's never going to be political will. What are you talking about? And I said, well, we're not going to be advocating eliminating property tax. Why? I just kept, so finally it got to the point where he says, well, we had a meeting and we met with the governor, and the governor said, this is the bill I want to see advanced in the legislature. And guess which one got advanced? That was the one.
Huh.
That's the kind of control and manipulation going on behind the scenes. It's not we file our bills and we get a hearing and it gets to the floor and it's debated and your representatives get to decide, is this the right thing to do? There's a lot of manipulation behind the scenes.
Interesting. So the vested interest is what continues to keep us tied to the property tax.
Exactly. And this is why Mays Middleton's campaign to eliminate taxpayer-funded lobbyists has been so important. And I'm glad he's not given up.
Yeah.
And he was one of the ones that I talked to because I knew he was going to become a senator. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They didn't have a challenger. The position was open. I thought it's slam dunk. He's going to get it. They love him in Galveston, in that area, and he made it. And I talked to him about it, and he's like, I could. He never said it, but this is why I want to meet with these people face to face, because you get so much more communication from them.
Sure.
Seeing how they behave and react, and the micro expressions that they send you, and I thought, he's not comfortable. One thing I thought, I don't want Mays doing it.
Yeah. Mays
is not ready.
Right.
And then he had this huge, initiative to try to eliminate taxpayer-funded. I thought, he's going to do it the Senate. That's great. And this is what we were trying to do this time too. Was we were trying to get author in the House and in the Senate at the same time. It's called companion bill, and it cuts what it does down. It fast tracks. They're both working the bill at the same time, so all it has to be done is a reconciliation at the end if they both get passed. And so we were trying for that, and we couldn't get a senator to engage with us. Of course, this is the first time we've tried that. So, slow is fast. I mean, it takes time. We wish we could make it happen quick, but we're getting there because, like I said, this session, what's happening in property taxes is
it's insane.
People, it's just like they've.
People are hearing.
It's outrageous.
Yes. Well, and the
300% and 400%.
Yeah, and the idea of eliminate property tax, to me, for a lot of people, it is so,
first time you hear it, it's crazy.
So foreign. Yeah, it's honest to God, it falls in the same category in just for me as secession.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's like, holy smokes! Wait a second.
Simple concept, but not easy.
Not easy to pull off.
No.
That's exactly right. And so, I think that, plus when you factor in all of the other elements of this political tug of war or political Shakespeare, if we will,
right?
Those elements being played out for everybody. I mean, it's like, in the last 48 hours, they put out this notice that, property tax is going to be one of the main things that, Abbott's talking about or wants to gather back up on, Yeah. Why didn't we get that done already? And what I think is crazy is people still try to justify not voting. They still try to justify not voting. They're like, I'm not. It's not going to. This is how it affects you. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
This is how it affects you.
This is the outcome.
This is the outcome. You never own your property.
That's exactly right.
And so because you don't own your property and you will it down to your kids, and now you have these appraisals that are astronomical, and you're sitting here in this situation where you're dead and gone and your family has to sell the farm or the ranch or whatever the case is,
yep,
or the hut, whatever you're living in here in Texas, but this is where if you don't show up at the ballot box.
And our primaries are the place to show up, and that's where the least number of people show up. That's good and that's bad, because it doesn't take very many people to flip that vote.
No, it does not. It doesn't.
If you can get out and get your neighbors, your friends, your church or whatever,
right,
organizations to go out and vote
Yeah.
for the guy, that's going to. I mean, like I said, we had 67 grassroots candidates that were wanting to do something serious about property tax, and like I said, about 20% of them wanted to eliminate, and most of those did not get elected because they voted for the incumbent.
Well, plus it almost. I know one of the difficulties I had whenever I was talking with Mr. Hillen, and I forget the young lady's name here locally.
Alicia Davis. I know them both.
The difficulty I had was, first of all, breaking it down. Okay, because it seems too simple to work. Okay, this idea. Okay, all we're going to do is go to the consumption. Okay, does a consumption tax work like a sales tax? Is that what it works like?
Well, here's the.
Is that what it looks like?
Let me explain that. First of all, we call it a consumption tax because that's what's in the Republican Party of Texas platform. That's one of the reasons. Right?
Okay.
Because they have, since 2008, that's as far back as I can go and acquire the platform. It's been in the platform since 2008 to eliminate property tax in one way or the other.
Okay, hold on. Say that one more time.
Yeah. Okay. In the Republican Party of Texas platform is a plank to eliminate property tax and replace it with a consumption tax, and not an income tax. They various versions of it, but pretty much it all says the same thing. Eliminate property tax, replace it with a consumption tax. Goes back to 2008.
Been very ineffective since 2008.
Yeah, very. Look, let me tell you, how many bills have there been filed that are a solution to eliminate property tax? One, ours. That's it. Never been filed before. Okay, there's been a couple where somebody like Valerie Swanson has filed a bill back in, I think it's 2017, that says eliminate property tax in 5 years. That's it. That's all it says. Nobody's going to go for that. That's not a solution.
Sure, that's an idea.
That's
a daydream.
Hand me a 45 and let me pull it to my temple, and that's what scares that. And what we're talking about, in our bill, is a revamping of the entire Texas tax system, going from, we have 60 plus hidden taxes,
right,
that we all pay for, but we don't see them. removing them and make it into a fair, efficient, transparent consumption tax. And we call it, and so we refer to it as consumption tax because our solution doesn't propose a sales tax. And that's where we get into the weeds. And that's what I try to stay out of. And here's my thing, when people read the bill and they say, oh, you're proposing a VAT tax. I say, yeah, that's a consumption tax. And I'm like, well, if you do that, the sky will fall. It will be the end of the...
Sure.
Look, Europe uses a VAT. Yeah, everybody... Okay, you know what? I don't care.
Right.
If the comptroller shows us that a sales tax works, fine with me.
Right.
But Rick, his comment about that is that no matter how he tinkered with sales tax, he could not get it to work. And having done a little bit of tinkering myself with and understanding more about how a VAT tax works versus how sales tax works.
Right.
I'll give you an example that I think maybe help. And first of all, it's not hidden. It's just like a sales tax. It's on every invoice. The question the legislators asked, well, who pays the VAT tax? I said the last consumer, the final consumer does. But everybody along the way does pay it. For instance, the businesses will pay a tax on their products and materials and services that they buy, but they get reimbursed when they resell it. So it's not a tax on a tax on a tax. That's called the economists call it pyramiding.
Okay. And
that's what we're trying to get rid of because we have taxes in our system that do that today. They pyramid, tax on tax on tax. So, if you look at our bill, it says VAT. And so far, none of the legislators have pushed back on that. It's only constituents and people who are asking questions about it that.
Sure.
But one of the things, TPPF didn't like our bill because it proposed to that.
Do you feel like the change has to be bigger than one legislator? This has to be a top-down type of transition.
Yeah,
I
think you're exactly right. And I've always understood that, but I thought the likelihood of me getting to the top is remote. Less likely than and if we can get started by getting legislators involved, then we'll see where it takes us. And it'll become clear as we move forward what's the right thing to do. But it wasn't Tony. It was one of the other legislators I talked to. He says, you need to talk to the governor and the lieutenant governor. I said, yeah, I understand. He says, you won't get to talk to the governor, but you'll talk to his staff, and that's good enough. But you might get to talk to the lieutenant governor. I said, yeah, I think I can. Well, guess what? I've got a colleague who has a friend who's going to see Greg Abbott this week because he's a close friend. And he says, I think we can get him to get us an audience with Greg Abbott. I'm like, well, great. If he does, that's fine.
Absolutely.
But you're right. That's where, okay.
It almost has...
what did I just say? The bills that got through were the ones that Abbott wanted.
Right. Well, and not just that, though. It to me, the only one who can come out of this without feeling like a martyr, because they probably won't get elected again. Or maybe I say they probably won't get elected again. Maybe they run off in a different direction and their political career takes them out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you've mentioned that a couple of times.
Right.
If you have a governor who is hell-bent and determined to make something happen along these lines, it just seems like he's the one who has the least amount of liability long term.
He would be a Texas hero if he does this. Look, Abbott already knows that people want eliminate property tax. 2017, 2019, 2021. I've got quotes from him. He just this last one, he says we got to have this special session immediately now because we want to put Texas on a path to eliminate property tax. I mean those are his talking points.
Well, that's good because
but he doesn't have a solution.
Well,
that's what we need to give him.
Yeah, that's what you need to be able to give him. And it's kind of crazy because he's talking those solutions in 2023, and you just said in 2008 was the latest you was able to go back, or the furthest back you was able to
I've
see the planks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, to me, it's you can't say it's too little, too late, but obviously, getting a defined path forward I really think these current appraisals and that are currently on people's desks to pay.
Right.
You know, pay the taxes on these appraisals. This is what we're going to do. You know, I think it's going to be a groundswell.
That's what's happening. Yes.
I really do.
And that was why I started this group, because I looked around and I thought, okay, I don't really know how to do this. How do I go about, working with my legislator and getting a meeting with them, or getting in touch with them, or communicating with them? And I started looking and I knew people that did and that had the tools to do it and could coach, but I didn't get that. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a group, and everything I learned to do from people who know,
right,
I'm going to share this. Because my intention, and that's what you look at our website at our About section, we're a group of Texas activists.
right.
We're not any kind of an organization. I'm just here to empower Texas voters who want to do something and don't know how to do it. To mentor them, to coach them, to give them the information they need about what's going on and when to do it. And my biggest takeaway from talking with the legislators I've talked, I said, what's the most effective way to influence the legislator? They all said face-to-face. They want you to come into their office.
Yeah.
It is an intimidating thing to think about. They're just like you and me.
Yeah.
And their staffs are wonderful.
Right.
And they're happy to have you. But what I did learn, and that was from that first meeting with Johnson Stickland, is you don't do it during the legislation. Don't do it when they're in session. Their hair's on fire.
Right.
You're one of 1,000 other dogs in their neighborhood all barking at the same time.
Right, right.
They just don't hear you.
So there's a method to the madness. And I mean,
You go and you meet with them after the session is over.
Yeah.
Immediately, if possible.
Yeah.
And you don't have to convince them. You don't have to know. You say, I want you to eliminate property tax, and here's the solution. Talk to this guy,
Right.
or look at this bill, or talk to this author, and get them to, to free their mind, and start thinking about, hey, it's possible, and my constituents want us to do this. And you know what? Our group is nonpartisan, and I'm really trying to enforce that.
right.
It's hard to not be partisan, but this is a Texas issue, not a Republican or a Democrat. I bring up the Republicans because they're the ones that have it in their plank, and they're the ones that purport to support it and to advocate for it, and they're not.
Right.
The members that want it, in the convention, they are there wanting it. The legislation is not doing it. And how do we get that? Is people need to contact.
People have to be involved.
They have to be involved. That's the only way this is going to work. And you can't do that with your appraisal district or your commissioners. They can't change the situation.
Your appraisal chiefs can't change it.
Right.
They can't change it.
The law.
No, they
not
can't
not
change-
do away
no,
with property tax.
No. You have to do other navigating elements. The no new tax or no new revenue tax and those types of elements. But this right here totally changes that conversation.
It removes it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me how I've had a number of these types of interviews with different varying people in different places of government, right?
Right.
And the common thread is that if the people do not get involved, if they don't get involved,
Yep.
you get what you got.
Yes. And you know who takes advantage of that? The lobbyists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They expect everybody to lay back here.
Well, I understand that, because we're all busy making a living, doing our jobs, raising our kids.
Sure.
It's hard.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I have compassion on people, but if this is killing you,
Yeah.
if you really want to do something to make a change, get your friends together and make a meeting with your legislator and go in there and civilly but firmly demand that they eliminate property tax.
See, so therein lies some of the dilemma. just simply for the fact that, it's kind of like this. So you have 3 households, all side by side. This gentleman over here is retired. This couple over here, they're in their prime. They're in their prime working, earning years.
Yes,
they say 45 to 60, right in there.
Where they're making the most. Yeah.
Making the most amount of bang for their buck. And then you take this single mother over here.
Yeah,
okay?
I know some.
So you're sitting here dealing with a situation where 1 out of the 3 is definitely going to have a match lit under her world, the single mother.
Right.
Okay? Because she's got 2 or 3 kids here. Okay? And this situation for her is going to be a very, very, very touching thing. You got the couple who's in their earning years. They're going to be like, okay, I see where it went up. Just sign it, send it back.
Yep.
Sign off on it and send it back.
Then they're
the reason I'm saying that is it's almost like this is not a fire for everyone.
Right.
This is almost
it depends
like
on your economic condition.
We lived in a town in Oklahoma that'll go unnamed, but I will say this: if you ever get a chance to move to Oklahoma, don't do it. There's no reason to. It's
really?
Just my take.
That's interesting.
That was just my take.
Yeah.
At the same time, we're here in basically this cul-de-sac type of town. The whole town was like this. But 5 streets over, when they would go and turn on their faucets, you had brown water coming out. Okay. There was about 12 families that was affected. Nobody did nothing until they all start going online, raising 10 kinds of Cain about this deal, showing video of them turning. So what I'm saying is
the optics was bad.
It was horrible. It was horrible. I mean, it was like,
I've seen those videos.
We got to get the guys out. We at least got to make the trucks run around. We got to get some shovels.
Right,
We got to figure out what's going on here, because these people can't ever have white clothes. They have to buy yellow because it's going to turn that color. But my point is, I think in the groundswell, if you will, because it's not a fire everybody's fighting.
Yeah.
It's almost like we have to hyper expose the optics. So if we have these single mothers and these not single mothers up here with Miss Davis, who is a firebrand for property tax, bringing these things together just like what you're doing. The people who it's affecting are really like a gravitational pull toward eliminate property tax. I'm eliminate property tax because I think when you tell me 60-something taxes are happening right now, I work in business. I've been in the oil and gas world for a while. I know. I know exactly what you're talking about. But the modern, I will say the layman consumer out here, especially like renters. Renters go, well, property tax don't affect me. Property tax absolutely affects you.
They're some of the ones that are impacted the highest by it because there is no homestead exemption.
Exactly.
There is no cap. That's considered a commercial property, and the commercial property, if they raise it up 300%,
it's just what it is.
It's 300% next year. That's
and
it.
So to me, I think there's a lot of street talk out here that we can go down, we can go over to the appraisal district, or we can go to the local county judge, or we can talk to the commissioners, and they're going to be able to touch any of this. They will be able to affect it on some level, but they won't be able to eradicate anything.
No, they can't.
No,
it's outside of their control.
They have to facilitate what the law is.
Yeah.
And so I think in the process of this, now you said eliminate property tax was up to how many people?
Oh, the group in the main group, we've got we're approaching 25,000.
Yeah,
I think it's about 24.6 today. Maybe.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It was great. We're on Facebook. That's where I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And this last year, we've been shadow banned for sure.
Right.
So not as many people have joined as I've seen in the past, but
Right.
we're still growing.
Yeah.
And then there are county groups that are starting up as well. So
Now, do you guys have a YouTube channel or anything like that, or is everything
not
pretty
really.
much
I
being
mean,
filtered
I've
through?
got a YouTube channel where one of my members produced some content, kind of introductory content and stuff. But I didn't find it to be that. Didn't get that much traction.
Yeah.
And so, and it takes time and resources. And so, if it did, I mean, if it was the solution, I'd be going for it.
Right.
But mostly, what I get is probably of those 25,000, I get a small percentage that are active and want and have the time to do it. You know, you're talking about the different groups. I think probably my sense is, not being able to look at numbers or do the analysis, but my sense is that a good majority of our members are in that retired set that
Okay.
are fixed income, and they are paying more in property tax than they ever paid in their mortgage.
Right.
And it scares the crap out of them.
Yeah, because I mean,
Because they see it rising up, and they don't have their income's not going up, and so guess what? They're getting priced out of their homes. So that's probably where the majority of the people are. But it's that small. There's a small active group that I always have that are advocating with their legislature or legislators, and they're the ones that are pushing this forward. But the more people we have that do that, the more attention we get and the more action we get, and that's what happened last session.
so really, in essence, does it look like you guys will have to craft another bill, find another, unless the meetings with Abbott go well, and he ends up.
It's hard to say. We'll see what happens after this session, but
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to get to file our bill in this special session.
Yeah.
Because I've looked at it, and the ones that are being enabled for legislation are the ones that were passed the HB. Anyway, it's Mayor's bill in the House and Bettencourt's bill in the Senate,
Right.
and they're gonna finish reconciling over those, and that's what's going to come out. Which isn't bad, but you see what I'm saying is
They're chipping away.
they're not. This is not going to go into effect until 2024, which gives your local mafias the chance to front run this relief and reform that's going to happen. And so that's why I think that we're seeing people get 300 and 400% increases on appraisal values, because they're out there front running this. And you know, like one colleague, his house, the acre that his house is on, in the country, was appraised at $68,000. 1 mile down the road, he's got two neighbors on both sides. Their acre was $20,000. The county commissioner down the road 1 mile, $5,000. His was 13 times more than
Right.
the county commissioner. He protested. He got him knock it down to $11,000, and he's thrilled. I said, they're still charging you double. They're still making double off you. What are you talking about?
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, this is what they're doing. Like, okay, we jack everybody's appraisals up. Okay, now we have to get it back or slow down, but we've got it. You know, going forward.
So
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think the part that's archaic to me is how that system works as a whole. Because in my time sitting down with Miss Barnett, who is the chief appraisal, or she's appraisal chief here in Jasper County, she communicated to me that, if memory serves me correctly, that there is no feasible way for them to actually go and lay eyeballs on every property in the county in a year's time. So the county,
No doubt.
is allowed by the state to have 3 years to go through the process of getting everyone appraised. Okay? Now, even that number is nuts as far as what they would have to appraise per year to keep up with that requirement.
Yeah.
So now we do groupings. And we have these groupings So when you have a 3-year window that these appraisals are going to come out on, 2 of those years, you're going to see discrepancies kind of like this situation over here if it's not just all out corruption, right?
Yes, and you know, in deference to your conversation with her, not everybody is corrupt. Okay, I mean, but there definitely is.
Yeah. I come from the oil and gas industry. I'm very familiar.
You've been around that block, have you?
Well, I mean, the thing is this, man. I mean, to me, to automatically assume that because a person is in a place of authority that they are corrupt,
right,
or tend to be corrupt,
right,
is just novice in my estimation. But whenever you start looking at the different pieces and you go, okay, wait a second, they have 3 years to do this. Okay, yes, you do have 30-day window to go and complain. You know, go file your complaint. But from what I'm sitting here thinking, okay, if these transitions, if this transition is really going to happen, it's really going to change some local. I mean, because correct me if I'm wrong here. If we go to a consumption tax, what local government offices go away?
CADs go away.
Bingo.
All the CADs.
Every one of them.
Every one of them. With the exception of those that can't do it. And that's where, like I said, the difficulty comes in, and that's where more time may be necessary.
Sure.
Rick's position is we may not be able to eliminate all property tax. I'm like, I don't agree with that. I think that where there's a will, there's a way, and we can find a way.
Yeah.
But you're right. That's the first thing that happens is that all the CADs go away. So there are people that don't want to see that happen because they're going to lose their jobs, and
sure.
And that's a hardship. But
what are we doing here?
The consequence is that people can't, don't ever own their homes, don't ever own the property, and they're losing it because. And let me tell you. That's a serious situation because you will be evicted if you can't pay your property tax.
Yeah, when the sheriff shows up.
Yeah, when the sheriff shows up, that's with a gun.
Yeah.
And fortunately, that's never happened that I know about in Texas.
Right.
But I'm aware of a situation where a guy would not vacate his home up in Pennsylvania. They've been fighting it since 2000. I kind of modeled my group after theirs. And he stood his ground. They sent the SWAT in after him. He fought back. They killed him over his house. That's not good.
That's not a good thing.
No.
Especially if it's...
And we can do better. We can come
Agreed.
up with a way that, transitions. I mean, we're not talking about a cutover.
Yeah.
That's the highest risk way to do anything. We're talking about a major change. That has to be a migration. And so it has to go slow, and it has to be there has to be a pilot. There has to be, before that, there has to be research done. Where are we going to do it? Let's see what we learn from transitioning them. Okay, for those lessons learned, then we pilot, and you start with a low risk, and you work your way to the high risk.
It almost makes sense that you could potentially save the CADs on a certain level to be able to.
People would have time to find new jobs. I mean, they got some pretty smart people.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, at the same time, what I'm saying is, inside that collection mechanism of consumption tax.
That's a good point. There very likely will be new jobs created.
They could potentially roll over into whatever's created to manage that.
That's very possible.
At the same time, I mean, maybe not. Maybe it is a weeding out process.
That's the other thing. You're talking about, like, we got 60 plus taxes that are being administered. So yeah, you take all those away, a lot of it. Administration jobs go. But my point about, Abbott would be a Texas hero because if we were to eliminate, if Texas were the first state in the union to eliminate property tax, it would be like a gold rush here. Businesses would be moving here like crazy. People would be relocating for the work and suddenly what I want to try to get across to the real estate agents, and I've got real estate agents in my group, not so much them, but their organization called TREPAC, which is Texas Realtors Association Political Action Committee. Those guys are convinced that if we go to consumption tax that it will hurt their business. I've read their material. Okay, so it's wrong-headed thinking. It's looking through a wrong-headed telescope.
Sure.
But my question is if you as a real estate agent, if your customers suddenly have 50% more to spend, what would that do for your business, your income?
Yeah, for real. And I mean, at the same
I think
time,
I think we can bring the realtors on our side.
how crazy will the property values be? I mean, if you think about it, how crazy will the property values be after a decision like that? I think
Supply and demand.
it would be about like, not to get on a Trump wagon because, obviously there's pitfalls there.
We're trying to stay nonpartisan here.
Staying nonpartisan, but at the same time, some of the things that legislation was able to create business wise.
Yes. Okay.
Because a lot of businesses did come during a certain season.
Right.
Can't blame that on anybody, I don't think, but maybe you could. And so, but to me, I'm sitting here thinking,
credit is due.
Say it again.
Credit where credit is due.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And so, that may be part of this, 4 to 7 year window of transition.
Mm-hmm.
Because how would you deal with the influx? I mean, right now,
It'll be a new set of problems. Yeah.
it's almost like, okay, it's one thing now another. At the same time, it's still a worthwhile venture to try to figure out how to make this happen.
Well, we joke, before we do this, we need to finish the border wall, the northern border wall.
Exactly. Now, I'm all for that one, but I think it almost has to be a passion of one of the major three.
Yes, I agree. That's where we need it to be, because the leadership would then. Everybody would see that the coast is clear and we can move forward on this.
What's the likelihood of sitting down with Dave Phelan?
0.
Really?
Oh, I've tried to talk to Dave.
Really?
Dave doesn't want to have anything to do with it. The last session, the third special session, was a property tax session. Our bill was supposed to go to the Ways and Means Committee, and we're pretty enthused about that, because instead of them having 400 or 500 bills on their plate, they had 40 or 50, and one of them would be ours, and we had a better chance of getting a hearing and getting on the floor. Guess what? That bill never got sent to the Ways and Means. I contacted his office. I talked to the staff. I said, "Why isn't our bill? Can you help me understand what's wrong with our bill? What is? Why did you? Why was it not qualified to go to Ways and Means?" I didn't get any response. I drove down there and talked to somebody, and then wound up coming back a second time, talking to the person who was supposed to have made the decision. He says, no, I didn't make the decision. It was made by the parliamentarians. Like, okay. I'm thinking, okay, now look, I'm going there because I'm expecting politics. And I'm expecting to be sent down a rabbit hole. They sent me down a rabbit hole anyway. But I had to follow through on it. They said, okay, you say parliamentarians are the ones that are making this decision. I'll go talk to them. So I go over to the office. Well, they're in session. So they're in there, and I talked to some intern, and he's very helpful and all. But I said, okay, I'll come back when they get out of session. That took the rest of the day. Came back to him. He says, the response I got was, we don't talk to the public. One of the things I did with Phelan was I filed a Texas Public Information Act request. It's it's like a Freedom of Information Act.
Sure.
It's on the Texas level, right? I got all my emails back. That's what they gave me, as far as, here's what we can show you about why your bill didn't get. They said, we don't have to answer any questions. And in the Information Act, Texas Public Information Act, it specifically says parliamentarians don't have to reply to the public. They didn't have to. They were excluded from having to respond to a.
So obviously they knew that when they sent you down there.
Yeah, they knew that. They knew what they were doing, and I just went, touche. You guys got me on that one. I was ready for something, but I didn't see it coming. I talked to James White after that, at the end of the day, and he says, that's ridiculous. He says, Phelan, the parliamentarians are under his management. Like, if only I'd known that.
Well, and what's crazy is it's almost like,
So you see where I'm going with feeling?
oh yeah,
Feeling was, I mean, it was a chessboard. I was just like, okay, I'm not going to get through this guy.
yeah.
But I think I'm going to give it a shot. I mean, I don't assume anything until,
Sure.
they prove me wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
And will I go back after him? Yeah, I'll go back after him.
Yeah, you don't
I'm going
necessarily-
to try to do Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick
Yeah.
and even Greg Abbott if we can get an
audience.
even with his staff,
Yeah, it's crazy on one hand to think about this on a local level, but to also think about the process on a statewide level when you want to encourage people to get involved.
Yeah.
And then you hear the gauntlet. It's like, holy crap, dude. Who wants to sign up for this beating? I mean, because it is a beating.
Yeah.
It's a threshing floor.
Yeah.
And
I don't know why they do it.
And some people would ask why you keep doing it.
Oh, I'm having fun actually.
Yeah.
I'm on the beating side.
There you go. There you go.
No, I don't do any beating at all.
Yeah.
You know who does the beating? The members.
Yeah.
The members beat, and then I get to play, the negotiator and come in and say, look, we have a bill, and we'd like you to support us, and can we count on you to do that? Or are there questions I can answer? And sometimes these guys have been around the block. I mean, I said that, several of the joint authors and co-authors didn't, I could tell, like, no, we don't want you trying to pinch hit for us in this game.
Right.
But some of them, highly competent. I mean, talk to Matt Sheehan. First thing out of his mouth, he says, what are you going to do about those districts that don't have any sales of goods and services? Like, boy, you went right for it, didn't you? The weakest link.
Yeah.
And he's right. And I said, you know what? That's a problem. And it's going to take time to figure out a solution. But meanwhile, we can eliminate property tax for everybody else.
Yeah.
And same thing with, and this is why I try to engage these people with Rick, but I have to pinch hit while he's on the bench, if he ever comes back. But we finally got to talk to Drew Springer. Drew Springer's chief of staff when he was a legislator, a representative, was one of the first people we talked to, and he was highly enthusiastic and wanted us to talk to Drew. Well, it just didn't work because we were too late in the game as far as the timing of the session and whatnot. But finally did get to talk to Drew last fall. And, I say that 80% of the time we get the same questions over and over. Mm-hmm. Well, he was in that 20%. And he says, yeah, there's probably 3 people in the legislature that know taxes as well as I do.
Yeah.
And he says, what are you going to do about this? And I'm like, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
And it was a level question that an economist like Rick already had the answer, knew the question you would ask him, and what.
Sure.
And I went back and I did the research, and I found where Rick had written about it. See, Rick, out of this research that Rick did, he created a 159-page report of his analysis, and it's detailed. It's got numbers, and he covers the things that Drew was asking about. And I said, here's what Rick has had to say, but Drew never got back to us. Of course, he's a senator now. You're talking about much more difficult level of legislator to get to with your senators. But I think again, slow is fast. Is if we continue, and this is what was. If I thought, look, we started this bill in 2013. If people had been able to continue advocating for this bill and building,
right,
we'd have it done.
It's almost like you're having to start over.
We had to, yeah.
Every session.
Yeah. And if we lose our author, then we, that kind of puts us behind the ball. But I believe that, with time, Drew will. I think Drew can be one of the best advocates for us because he's at the level where he can offer rebuttals to somebody like Bettencourt, who's going to try to
hem it up.
Just tell you, oh, this will never work.
Yeah.
Bettencourt came to the Republican Party convention, which was held in Houston. So I have friends who were there, so I went to visit with them, and I was supporting a couple of them that were in the Legislative Priorities Committee, trying to get property tax elimination a priority, and he just missed out. So Betancourt shows up to the committee, and he's laughing and joking and like, oh, we can't do this. It'll be 25% sales tax. Oh, well, we can't do that. That's ridiculous. No, those are the things that the opponents of it say, making the assumption that we never broaden the base, that we just keep it at that 28%. Well, yeah, then it's going to have to be 25% to cover just the, we'll say, $67 billion of property taxes collected every year.
Wow.
It's actually more now, but the latest figures from that have been put out by the comptroller is 2019, and that's 67, but it's now over 70 billion. And it's gone up from, in the last 10 years, from 40 billion to 71 billion, a 58% increase. Last year in Texas, property tax increased 12% on average. 6 years, and your property tax doubles at that rate. Rule of 72.
Right.
6 years.
Insane.
That's insane. And this is after all the relief and reform that they've been doing for the last 10 years. That's why our motto is no relief, no reform, eliminate property tax. Because it has failed 100% of the time since the days of the Great Depression, when there was a national movement to eliminate property tax. People were losing their homes and their farms like crazy. And the legislatures stepped in and created sales tax for reform and homestead exemptions for relief. 80 years ago, here we are, still working to try to save our homes and our land. Hasn't worked. What's the definition of insanity?
Continue to do the same.
Do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. Expecting
a different result. Bingo.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where can they find you?
EliminatePropertyTax.com is our website.
Okay. Is that where it has, like you were referring to, Rick's report? Is that accessible?
Not from the website.
Okay.
But it is from...
Is that on your Facebook?
Yeah, the Facebook page is the best place to join us. That's where most of our activity takes place.
Plus, you have a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, there's a lot more interaction. I've got a couple of key articles that we have in our featured section.
Mm-hmm.
I don't particularly share Rick's study because it's written by an attorney and an economist.
Okay.
It's not easy reading.
Sure. Yeah.
But there are people that want to see it, and I say, here it is.
I got you.
And sometimes that's the legislators that want to know more about it.
Very cool. Russell Bennett, man, I appreciate you making the trip.
It's been really good.
I really do, man. I'm intrigued because I think on a local level we deal with these are microcosms of what we're dealing with at the state.
Yeah. Yep.
And like I told you a minute ago, I just left a commissioner's office, and his encouragement to the people was to get involved. If you want your community to change, get involved.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing to do, I know.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that, what level of involvement can you get involved in?
Sure.
Like I said, if the gold standard, face-to-face with your legislator. And the time to do that is when they're home in their district offices.
Yeah.
That's when their shields are down, they're relaxed, the phone's not ringing, nobody's calling.
They're not playing firemen.
They're not playing firemen, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've had great conversations with them, really, really good. And if you can't do that, then email or phone calls. Some people like to do phone calls. I like to put an email out to them, and that's one of the things that we do is that when we have something that we're asking people to help us with, I usually say, here's the legislators, their emails, and here's a sample message that you can copy and paste. So in 2 minutes you can send them to the legislators, and we try to contact all of them because this is not a local issue. This is a Texas issue.
Sure. This, to me, kind of as we're wrapping up here, to me, it looks like we've got to figure out, what the pain point is for everyone. And I think what you just said there a minute ago is very, very key. It doubles in 6 years.
If we keep it at 12%, yes.
It doubles in 6 years. So, to me, that's where the pain point becomes.
That's frightening. That's horrific.
Insane.
Yeah.
It really is insane for especially a party that has part of their plank.
For 15 years.
It's insanity is what it is.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's where the pain point is, because in my analogy a minute ago with the retirees and the people who are in their prime and then the single mothers, this is where it kind of creates that fire across all borders here in society for all of us to kind of step up. Because, I mean, you can't tell. I don't know a man alive or a woman alive who has worked their butt off their whole life to afford 10, 15, 2 acres.
Yeah.
We ain't talking about Yellowstone.
I know.
We're talking about some folks who had some property, 2 acres left to them by their grandparents.
Yeah.
That they're going to lose in the long run because of this really negligent.
Developers want to take that land and put lots of roofs on it.
Sure.
And that's part of, you talk about why don't we do this, or what are the things that developers are,
Lobbying.
Can be, and this is the point I make about lobbying is, lobbyists don't sign petitions, they don't hold protests outside the Capitol, and they don't really testify in committees that much. They meet face to face.
Yeah.
And I go in there, I see evidence of that.
Yeah.
And that's who's in control.
Yeah. Well, I think it screams.
We can flip that.
I think it screams of a statewide negligence. To me, especially on the Republican Party side of things,
Don't get me started on that one.
it's massive.
Yeah.
And so, I think for anybody who's listening to this, who has a representative or someone on a statewide level who is a part of the Republican Party, I think that ought to be shoved up in their face day one, tomorrow.
Supposed to sign off that they've read the party platform. And the party has created a list of 8 legislative priorities. They reduced them down to 8 to try to make it as simple and easy as possible for the legislature to get something done.
Yeah.
And what does the lieutenant governor come out with? His own list of legislative priorities. What does the governor come out? His own. Why aren't you all talking about what we have defined as what we want for
Sure.
you? You're supposed to be employed for. You're supposed to be our employees.
Yeah.
Not our leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a different.
That's another conversation. Yeah.
It's another conversation, because you and I both know, that the main objective of everyone who is elected is to make sure that they're never not reelected.
Not reelected, right?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, therein lies the dilemma when you start throwing lobbyists in the mix. And then, little bills like this from a little group of about 25,000 people on Facebook really doesn't matter, as long as the pain point is not realized by everyone. And the fact is, if the pain point is realized by everyone, number one, you have a political party who has in their plank, one of their planks is specifically
number 90. This
number
session.
90.
90. Axe the tax, they call it.
Axe the tax. And they've only had one bill and a couple of little menial bills.
Frivolous is what I call it.
Frivolous. Yeah. So to me, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, this is absolute neglect on the Republican Party side of things.
I agree.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree.
So, any last things you want to throw out to the people? They can check you out on Facebook, Eliminate Property Tax, Russell Bennett, EliminatePropertyTax.com.
Oh, don't come to my personal page. Come to our group page. But,
go to the group page.
Yeah, go to the group page and join us. And if you have there's a local group here. You're in Jasper County, is that right?
I live in Newton County, but Jasper County is right here.
But there are county groups you can join where you can collaborate on local issues. One of the things we did was we created a second group called Appraisal Nightmares, where people needed help.
Okay.
And we were getting a lot of that, and so we've shifted that over there, and it's easier for them to focus on the kind of things because we're trying to stay at state level, focus on the advocating for the bill to eliminate property tax and get that in our sessions for the legislature. So that's the best place to go. Look for the website, the Facebook page.
Okay.
And if you want to, you can go out there and look at a couple of YouTube little spots that we
YouTube
created
videos
as well.
and stuff like that.
And if you want so inclined to share them, we'll do that too.
Very cool. Very cool. Mr. Bennett, I appreciate your time. Appreciate
Thanks,
your
sir.
efforts, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, if you like this type of content, please like, share, and subscribe. The pain point is on all of us to see the clarity that in 6 years, if it remains the same, it will double. I just want to hit that one last point. It will double. That's everybody. That's not the single mothers. That's not the retirees. That's everybody. Folks in their prime. It's everybody. All right. You have been listening to Not on the Payroll right here at notonthepayroll.com. Please check us out at Facebook. Check us out at YouTube. Check us out at Rumble. Also check us out at Twitter. Get over and check out Eliminate Property Tax. We love you. We hope you have a good rest of the week. Continue to do good and fight the fight.